Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be chatting about all things self-tapes. Now, what is a self-tape, you ask? Well, a self-tape is when you send an audition to casting, but you tape it all yourself. You record it yourself and you bring it to life and you share it with casting, and they review it and they figure out if they want to book you for the role. So I'm going to share 4 of my best tips when it comes to creating your own self-tape, especially because we are all shooting from home these days. And hopefully these tips will help you when you go to create your version of a self-tape audition. Let's get right into it. Okay, so tip number 1. Now, of course, this is not run to the store and buy something new, but I am recommending that you lean on technology where you look crystal clear and beautiful. So high-tech gear, that is piece of advice number 1. Now, I always say if you're serious about this industry and you're serious about becoming an actor, investing in yourself, whether that's classes or gear, will ultimately go a long way, because what you end up presenting to casting will be high quality, and that also just like feeds into your performance. Obviously, if you're shooting on an iPhone, that's totally okay when you're getting started, and I mean, even to this day, sometimes I do shoot on my iPhone, but of course, if you have it accessible, then I highly recommend just investing in a little base camera or lens to start your journey as an actor, and maybe you can even borrow one from a friend. So just so you're aware, the camera that I'm actually shooting on right now, and the one that I love to use for not only Zoom auditions, but also my self-tapes, this is the Canon EOS Rebel T7i, and I've had this camera for a really long time. It was about $1,000, cha-ching, I think, when I bought it, but of course you can find cheaper versions, and I highly recommend just investing in a camera that will capture you and bring you to life in a very beautiful way. Now, tip number 2, and people don't often think about this, but sound is very important. Now, of course, a good DSLR will always capture, pretty standard sound. I don't have a mic plugged into my camera right now, and I think it sounds okay, you kill me. But I do recommend that you are wary of your sound when you're creating a self-tape. Now, you want to make sure that you're watching your takes back and that you're selecting your favorites before sending them off, and just make sure that you're not peeking or screaming or doing anything that might be alarming to casting. So make sure you're going for that high quality look and high quality sound. The state will be happy to give us Samantha on her own once you sign this letter of recommendation. Tip number 3, take your time because it's not an audition. Now, the luxury of a self-tape and why actors love self-tapes is that we don't have to have the nerves of going into an audition. So typically the way it works is you get called in by casting to go in for an audition, you receive your audition sides, and you'll go in, there'll be a reader in the room, casting, maybe even a director, you'll run your sides through with them, they're gonna record everything, you're gonna do it through with the reader, and then you leave if they have no other notes. Maybe you'll do it once through, twice through, but otherwise you will then leave after that, and you really have no control over the situation. I'll put it that way. You have control over your performance, and you have control over how you can, protect your nerves. You don't really have control over the way you look on screen. So ultimately, when you're shooting a self-tape, you can really lean in and be creative and make sure that everything looks fabulous. So that's why I say the joy of a self-tape is that you have control of everything. You have control of who your reader is, which is the person reading the sides that are not your lines. And then you also have control over your camera, your sound, the way you've done your hair, the way it looks in frame, how are you framing the shot, that type of thing. You have control over all of that. So take advantage of that and take your time. I remember when all of this kind of first started and we went into this version of lockdown, my agent sent out a note being like, hey, everyone, you now have the luxury of creating your own tapes. So lean in, make them amazing, make them show-stopping, because that's how you're gonna ultimately book these roles, especially in 2021 where no one is auditioning in person. And that's what makes self-tapes so important at a time and a year like this one. And then finally, and I have mentioned this, but I think it's worth emphasizing, make sure your reader is actually an actor.
Plus, the last time someone tried to adopt Jill Sam, it went badly. Wendell broke into the house just to go get her. We can't do that again.
So he's a criminal.
What?
Now, I don't mean they have to be like a professional actor, but you don't want to have a reader that is going to not only take you out of the scene, but then also someone whose voice might be distracting for casting off screen. So if you're not aware, like of course when you're in your self-tape, this is like the framing and the actor is acting and okay, we're in the scene. And meanwhile, there's a reader who will be to the left and you'll be acting with that person. So they'll be reading all of the lines that are not your lines for the audition. So because of that, and your focus is so on your reader, and of course, another lesson is that you're never looking directly down the barrel, as they say, directly into the screen. You're always looking at your other fellow reader and actor. So you're engaged with them. So the problem is that if they're not in the scene with you, it can be really tough to have a successful audition. So in the past, I've leaned on best friends or even my boyfriend or someone who they're not necessarily like professional actors, but they absolutely are invested in the scene with me. They want to make sure that they're giving the most so that I can give the most. And I think that's really important. So make sure that you're choosing wisely when it comes to a reader. So one other thing to note is, and this is kind of a trick because of, our circumstances and maybe you can't be in person with a reader, you can always dial in a friend, and they can just be a voice in the room with you as you record. So that's one way to do it. I have heard of actors doing both, like recording their voice as the other lines and then you're live doing the audition. But I think that's super distracting because casting is going to hear like your own voice echoing back at you with the other lines. And I don't recommend that. I know people have done that, but I personally don't recommend that. So either call a friend and have them dial in or have them there in person with you. That of course is the ideal situation. But yes, like I said, just make sure that they are engaged as much as you are because it does transpire on screen. So again, to recap my little self-tape, best tips, best tricks, make sure it's high quality, make sure you're following those dimensions very carefully because casting wants to make sure that they're seeing the right screen here as we see. You don't want to be shooting vertically like an Instagram video because they don't like that and they almost always call that out. They're like, please do not send in an Instagram video. So just follow the lessons, don't do that. Shoot like you're in a movie, baby. That's what I always say, shoot like you're in a movie. So make sure that your dimensions are right, make sure that it's as high quality as you can get it, whether that's on an iPhone or a DSLR. Make sure that your sound is crispy and clear. And like I said, if it's not good, just do another take. You have the luxury, take your time. Because you're shooting it yourself, you are your own director. So make sure that you are producing the highest quality video and audition you possibly can. And finally, the reader, make sure they are engaged with you, make sure that they care as much as you do, make sure they want you to book that role because they'll also help give you notes. If they see you do something or if your hair looks weird on screen, you want someone behind the scenes that you trust that can give you those notes and ultimately help you book that role. So I hope you enjoyed these self-tape tips, I'll call it. Self-tape tips. This will be episode 2 of Acting 101. Please leave any comments below because I love answering your acting questions. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on TikTok at Torri.Webster for more acting tips, tricks, and Hollywood secrets. See you in my next video. Bye guys.